Hello everyone. In this video I'll tell you a little bit about this writing style guide that should help you prepare documents, both executive summaries and things like papers and potentially your thesis type documents. So this writing style guide and the bullet points within it I've developed over the years based on advice that people gave me on my writing, and it's focused specifically on mathematical type documents. So let's go through the bullets one at a time and explain what they're saying. The first bullet here is define all terms. Now this is especially important for scientific writing. So for example, don't use words that you haven't defined. So if the word valid is not defined in your document, don't say something like thus vector A is valid. That might mean something to you, but to the reader it doesn't convey any information because you haven't defined the word previously. So just be very careful that you have very clear meaning to all the words that you have in your document. The second bullet is no vagueness. Now this happens because a lot of times as we're writing, we start with some large complicated idea that we want to communicate, and we start writing that idea, but in the middle of writing it we realize, oh wait, it's going to take me 3 pages to try to describe this correctly. And so instead of writing it completely, what we do is we go back and we cut things down, and then we leave some kind of vague sentence in the middle of the document. Now that vague sentence doesn't actually communicate anything to the reader. And so as you're writing your documents, just make the choice to either explain things fully or just don't explain them. So get rid of all of these vague statements. The next is use structure to explain why. What I mean here is that your reader should always know why they're reading a certain part of your document. This goes for a section, the document overall, and each paragraph. So use structure within those to tell the reader why they're reading it. So for example, use topic sentences on your paragraphs to tell them what the content of that paragraph is and its purpose. Use little topic paragraphs for each of your sections to tell the reader what the main purpose of that section is. And in this way, what you can do is you can help readers essentially skim your document, because they can read these purpose statements and decide whether it's worth it for them to continue reading that paragraph or that section, or whether they should skip to the next. This is especially important if you're writing an executive summary type document. The next bullet, present tense, is something that's true of mathematical writing, which is you should only use present tense in your documents. So don't write things like in section 6 we will show. Just say in section 6 we show. And the reason for that is because it's less words and it's easier for the reader to understand. Present tense is the easiest tense to actually understand when people are reading. Provide interpretation of notation. So what I mean here is if you have some big long formula or mathematical model formulation in your document, spend the words to give intuition about that notation and describe exactly what it means. So don't just throw a bunch of variables and constants in there, even if they've been defined earlier. If you have the equation, spend a sentence or two after it giving an English language interpretation of that question to help the reader decipher the notation that you've written. Include diagrams. So you should have as many pictures in your document as possible. And this is because oftentimes a reader doesn't even read your document. What they do is they flip through and they just look at the pictures. And so you should use those pictures to really communicate the basic ideas in your document. They really clarify all kinds of things like analysis results and proof ideas, etc. Along with those diagrams, use long captions. So this is because when that reader flips through your documents and looks at your pictures, they oftentimes don't read the text, but they will spend the time to read the caption under the picture. So in that caption, you should take about a paragraph or half a paragraph, have it be long, and tell the reader why you've placed that picture in your document. Tell them what's the key idea that you're trying to communicate with that picture and what's interesting about it. So make sure you have long captions in your documents. Use active voice. And this is a common thing that people will suggest as they edit your documents. And there's a very simple reason for it. And the reason is that active voice uses less words to communicate the exact same meaning. So just to give you an example, instead of saying something like, it is desired that X, just say, we desire X, or X is great. All of those things basically communicate that X is a good thing to have, but the less words you use to communicate your ideas, the clearer your document is. This goes along with the next bullet, which is keep sentences short. Sentences that are very long and include multiple sub-phrases are very, very difficult to understand for the reader. And they might, in fact, try to read that sentence 6 or 7 times before they can even begin to understand what you're trying to communicate with the sentence. Instead, you should keep the sentences short and let the ideas flow between sentences instead of within one long sentence. So a good rule of thumb that I've heard for this is that if as you're reading a sentence you have to take a breath, then that sentence is too long. Another thing that people use as a shortcut here is they just look at the number of lines that the sentence takes, and if it's more than 2 or 3 lines, it's probably too long. Next is don't overuse notation. In general, don't use mathematical notation if you can be precise with a short English language phrase. If you can do that with English, just use the English in a precise way to communicate your meaning. For mathematical documents, don't have any proofs outside of proof claims. So it shouldn't be the case that the reader is reading your paragraph and all of a sudden you jump into proving something. If you're going to prove something, have a claim and underneath it say proof that proves that particular claim. That way your claims are very clear and their associated proofs are very clear as the reader is going through your document. In addition, this also goes for technical mathematical type documents, which is use lemmas. And what I mean by this is that sometimes a proof might take 6 or 7 pages, and to make it easier for the reader to follow, you should break that 6 or 7 page proof into little substatements that you're proving. So those are your little lemmas. You would have a little lemma statement and then a proof after it, and several of those would make up your big proof. That really helps a reader break down your argument as you're making it.